Welcome back to the Caregiver Connection training series. This is part 2 of Learning is as Easy as ABC. If you haven't watched part 1, I encourage you to go back and watch it. It's only 11 minutes long. But equally important, make sure that you've successfully been able to do the practice activity. Because building a skill really involves being able to do something. And every training, we're going to build some component of a skill. And then these skills are going to build upon each other. So if you're missing pieces, especially at the foundation, or if that foundation really isn't strong enough, it's going to be difficult to keep building and eventually master that skill. So if you're here right now, it's time to level up. Look at all the things that you are able to do now. These are all essential pieces to being able to teach your child a new skill. All right, now in episode 1, we broke down all learning into just 3 parts, A, B, C. And the goal of this whole training series is to really be able to teach you how to teach your child new skills. And by the end of this episode, you're going to be able to be about halfway there. You're going to be able to apply what you've learned about B and C. And that's going to make it easier to go back, and we'll add part A. All right, so ABC. If you recall, B stands for behavior, and that's what a person does. So to teach your child something, it's not going to be enough to just tell them something, and it's not going to be enough to even just show them something. You have to be able to observe some response. So they have to do something that you can observe and measure. That's behavior. Now, I had you practice observing your child during their typical day routines. And as you were watching and listening to them, you were doing something that's really important to teaching. And you might not have even been aware that you were doing it. So you were evaluating whether their behavior met some kind of criteria that would ultimately determine how you would respond. And some of the positive things that I saw my child doing, for example, was asking for a pair of scissors, following a direction to throw a paper away. So he put in the paper in the trash can. And I saw him jumping on the trampoline. All right, so I want you to go ahead and think back to 3 positive things that you saw your child doing. And I want you to go ahead and write those down. And as you're writing them down, pretend that you are going to hand me this piece of paper, and I don't know your child. Okay. So you need to write it down exactly what it looks like. So if I took that paper and I acted out what I was reading on the paper, that it would look exactly like what your child was doing. And you'll see in a little bit why that is important. But go ahead and write those things down and pause if you need to. We're going to come back to that a little later. All right. So as I had you practicing, whenever you would see your child do something you wanted them to be doing, you acknowledged it by telling them what they were doing. So you added some attention. And I had you add something else that they would like, just to really ensure that they're getting lots and lots of good stuff whenever they're doing wherever they're doing those things that you want them to be doing. And you could have really added just about anything as long as it was valuable at the moment. So going back to what my examples here, when I saw my son jumping on the trampoline, I added some quality attention and specific praise. I was like, "You're jumping on the trampoline." And then I grabbed a balloon and I tossed it in, and we kind of hit it back and forth as he jumped. Now, because jumping on the trampoline resulted in my attention and the fun interaction with the balloon that we were having, he's more likely to jump on the trampoline in the future. And you're probably wondering, why I reinforce jumping on the trampoline? Like, what wouldn't he be jumping on the trampoline anyway, right? All right. So one, It's an opportunity for me to spend a quality moment with my child every day. That's important for both of us. But really, the main reason why I did that is I caught him jumping on the trampoline rather than on the couch because every now and again jumps on the couch and I really don't like that. So hopefully by reinforcing when he was jumping on the trampoline, I made it more likely that when he wants to jump, he's going to go downstairs, jump on the trampoline. All right, so now look at your list of things you saw your child doing and what did you do when you observed them doing these things? All right, so even if you can't think of a specifically what you did, you hopefully strengthened or increased that response in the future. Now, the reason I say hopefully is just because it happens after behavior doesn't mean it affects future behavior in the way we want it to. So here are some keys now to really to really refine that skill and make sure that we're delivering reinforcement effectively. So effective use of reinforcement keys. So first, it's all about timing. It can only reinforce behavior if it follows behavior. So you have like a cause and effect, and it's really not effective if you put the effect before the cause. It's kind of a mouthful to say, so I'll give you an example. Um, if you think about somebody that works on a sales commission, when do they get their payout? Do they get it before or after they make the sale? All right. It's always after because if you flip that around, you're not really likely to get the same result. And it's kind of like if you gave your kid a bowl of ice cream and you said, "Here, I'm going to give you this to you now, but you must promise me that you'll eat your dinner." Then what do you do if they eat the bowl of ice cream, but they don't eat their dinner? And or maybe they just take one bite and they throw the rest of it on the floor. What do you do then? All right. You also want to deliver it immediately. So if your child does something that you want them to do again, something good should happen immediately after or as close in time as possible. Because the more time that passes between the two, the less likely that there will be a connection between that cause and effect. All right. It also must be valuable at the moment. And we can't assume that just because we know that our child likes something, that that's really something that's going to be valuable at the moment. So, for example, my child loves to play outside. And even though this is really something that is enjoyable most of the time, I also know that there's times when it's not. So he doesn't like to get wet. And if it's raining, going outside is probably the last thing that he wants to do. And he likes to jump on the trampoline, but it's really not valuable first thing in the morning or right after he eats a meal. And your child's preferences may change. It can used to like Paw Patrol, he's not interested in that anymore. He used to love Duplo blocks, those big giant blocks. But now he prefers Legos. And about the only time where Duplo blocks are something that he likes is when he sees his little sister playing with him. So here's some ways to maintain or strengthen something's value. So unless your child is asking for something specifically, you want to try to change what comes after that behavior every time or as much as possible. So of course, you can reuse it again, but I try to switch it up because if it's always the same thing after a particular response, then what happens when that starts to lose value is you might also run the risk of losing that response. Try to present in different ways. We all like novelty. It's kind of like why I go shopping and I buy a black shirt, even though I have a closet full of black shirts, right? It's because this one's different than the ones I already own. So that balloon that we were hitting back and forth, I don't always hit the balloon back and forth. Sometimes I blow it up and I let it go and it goes flying around the room. Sometimes I kind of deflate some of the air into my mouth and then I talk in this like high pitched, funny voice, and my kids love it. And they just do just about anything for a balloon. But actually, let me restate that. It's not that they would do anything for a balloon. They would do just about anything to see what I do with a balloon. And then here's your final tip is give small amounts at a time. So both my kids take after me. They love chocolate, but I don't give them a king size candy bar after everything they do. Um, they get sometimes a mini M&M, a mini bacon chip, um, and maybe a couple if they're lucky. And this really keeps them wanting more and gives me lots of opportunities to keep teaching them more. And then every now and again, they do something spectacular. They get a Hershey Kiss or like a fun size candy bar. Which leaves me perfect segue into this next key to effective use of reinforcement. The better the response, the better the reward. So think about it like giving a tip at a restaurant. You'd give an average tip for average service, right? And if the service wasn't great, you'd probably give less. If it was exceptional, you'd probably give more than you typically would. But if servers got the same tip, no matter what their attitude was like, how hard they worked, how much effort they put into it, and regardless of the pace they did it at, how many mistakes they made, or how much you actually did for them, um, but you probably wouldn't end up you'd probably end up always getting low quality service. That's what I'm trying to say. So there'd really be no standard or a reason to rise above standard. So now in terms of reinforcing your child's behavior, the more effort that's required. So maybe it's something they're just learning, or maybe it's something they don't really prefer to do. And then the faster they do it, the more accurate and the more independently they do it. So they don't need a lot of help from you to do it. Those responses should get the best quality reinforcement or better quality reward. All right. So when you're first learning to do something, something good should happen every time you see them do it. And when you don't know how to do something, it's usually more effortful. So you want to remember the example of giving a tip. The reward really should match the effort. Now, once they know how to do it on their own, and keep in mind that if you have to help them in any way, they really can't do it on their own yet. So, but when they can do it on their own, you want to continue to reinforce it often, especially if the activity is not really enjoyable on its own, but you won't have to reinforce it every time to maintain it. And we'll talk about that in a upcoming episode. All right, so we're going to be practicing some steps involved in getting ready to teach your child to do something new. And a good rule of thumb is that you want to focus on no more than about 3 things at a time, because the more you focus on, the fewer opportunities you're going to have for each. All right, so you're going to need to consider some of your competing priorities. You got a lot going on at work, you're not going to have as much energy and you're going to have less time to be able to devote to that. And you also might have to divide that time and energy possibly between other children and then, of course, yourself. So you might be focusing on a skill like toilet training that requires a significant amount of resources and also your child's time and energy too. So it's perfectly okay if you need to drop it down to 2 or even just 1 thing to work on right now. You can put everything you have into that 1 thing, and then they learn to do that 1 thing and then pick something else and move on. All right, so go ahead and look at that list of those 3 things that you wrote down that you saw your child do. And we're going to pretend like they can't do these things yet. So these are things you're going to need to teach them to do. All right. So this is where that practice comes in. I told you we were going to kind of half practice what it's going to be like to teach a new skill, but I had you pick things that they were already doing because I didn't go over the teaching procedures yet. I didn't go over that A part. And I also wanted to make sure that these were things that they could do the other things kind of that would come before that. 'Cause sometimes I've done it myself. I pick something to work on and my child doesn't have the kind of component skills yet to be working on that right now. So I had you pick something right now that you see your child do, but we're going to pretend like they don't do it. So kind of mimicking what that's going to look like. All right. So now look at that list. Would you be able to work on all those things right now, given your current circumstances and what's going to be involved in teaching those skills? And likely, somewhere along the line, you probably helped for them to learn those skills to begin with. Kind of think back, like, how much effort was that to teach? And can I do that right now, given what I have on my plate? And maybe my child's in school, so we have less time to work on it during the day. I can work on it on the weekends. So if you answered no, then look at that and pick which one or two you're going to work on right now. Or maybe you say, no, I'm not going to do any of these things on this list. I'm going to pick something else completely or entirely. All right. So identify any naturally occurring opportunities that you have for teaching it. Are there enough opportunities there? Remember, the more opportunities, the more practice, the faster you're going to learn it, the better you're going to learn it. So maybe are there additional opportunities that I can create? I can add and embed within what we're doing. And if you have to add additional things on top of what you're already doing, you might want to kind of go back and analyze, like, can I do this? If it's going to be more effort, can I do this realistically, given what I have on my plate right now? Maybe I need to take something off of that. All right. So we are going to now define what that behavior looks like. So if you said, I saw my child being responsible, well, what did that look like? Okay. Define it in behavioral terms. So if I said, I saw my child keeping their room clean or cleaning their room, again, what does that look like? So if I told my child that he needed to keep his room clean, right? He's 7 years old. This first picture is actually what he considers to be a clean room. And my husband actually also thinks that this is a clean room. So it's really, really difficult to make that expectation clear to either one of them. So we had to break it down into, all right, well, the main thing here that I really need him to do, and the thing that is really kind of making the room messy, is he needs to put his dirty clothes in the laundry basket. So that was what we focused on. So we made it clear to everybody in the house that this is what it was going to look like, and we could all observe it and measure and reinforce it consistently. All right, so this is what we want it to look like. But this next picture here, this picture on the far right, am I going to accept that? Because sometimes it looks like that. Okay, so obviously not the clothes on the floor, but what about if the clothes are like kind of hanging half in, half out? What is that? Is that going to be acceptable, or do I go back and reteach that, or am I accepting it for now? And we kind of decided, yes, that's acceptable, but we're just not going to give a lot of reinforcement for that. We're really going to reinforce well when the clothes are all the way in. All right, so now every single time you observe them doing one of these three things, any of these things that you chose, might in some cases might even two or one thing. You're going to provide something of high value at the moment. You're going to do it immediately after they do it. And you're also going to practice how to maintain the value of what you're using. So remember, for example, that was something like varying what you're using, delivering in different ways. And then when you see them doing it, their very best that you've ever seen them do it, you're going to give the best quality of your attention and their favorite things and a lot of it. Also, continue to practice giving specific praise. So it's not good job, but something that tells them exactly what they did. You put your dirty clothes in the basket. Nice. And whenever you see them doing other things that you want them to be doing, but these aren't the three things that you've identified, you only need to reinforce those things sometimes. Maybe try to pick a different thing to reinforce every time, but give a little less quality and quantity to make sure that you're saving the most valuable rewards for the things that you're focusing on teaching. All right, that wraps up episode 2. If you have any questions or suggestions for topics, feel free to reach out to me. And don't forget to check out this resource collection for more. I hope to see you for episode 3. All comes down to A. See you next time.